goth adjacent is what I would describe my overall personal style as anyway. So that's what we're doing with this house too.
Cookie smut.
Okay, so I bought this kit, this Oreo mini holiday chocolate cookie house. I actually bought it over a year ago, last Christmas season. Best if used by February 6th, 2020. February 6th, 2020. A much simpler time in America. I bought it at the same time as a little gingerbread village kit. I did that one last year. It's really cute. You should check it out on my Instagram. I made like a little Godzilla like stamping on the little village. And I bought this at the same time, but I just didn't get around to making it last year. I figured I'll just make it this year. It's an Oreo thing. It's probably chock full of preservatives. Honestly, I'm not going to really eat it anyways. I just want to decorate it. I'm not gonna eat it. So who cares? This is not the year to care. Who could possibly give any fucks about expiration dates, So got the Oreo one because it has this darker cookie and I thought that was interesting. I just wanted to pick one that was like the most different from the other one that I had. My initial idea is to do something like a spooky. So yeah, I want to decorate this and I want to show you what I come up with. So it's worth noting that this kit does have imprinted doors and windows, roof decorations. Most of the kits like this at the grocery store or drugstore do. So if you buy one, you can definitely use that as a guide for your decorating, but I'm going to ignore all that and do my own thing because of course I am. The kit, of course, comes with its own icing, but as soon as I touched it, I thought,
gross.
So I'll be using my own royal icing. The kit also comes with a bag of mini Oreos, which they suggest you can use in the decoration of the house, but I just snacked on them instead.
So good. Mostly so good.
And the kit also comes with a little bag of candy, but I want just a sort of black and white theme, so I'm not going to use those at all. When I opened up this box, this inner clear plastic bag holding the cookies was already open.
Oh, it's already open. Oh, gross.
So if it wasn't already expired and I already wasn't going to eat any of the cookies, I would have been ever so slightly disappointed. Come on, Oreo. You can do better than that. And y'all, these cookies made so many crumbs. This is the first of so many futile attempts to keep my work surface clear of crumbs. But yeah, they're just going to keep coming back. You're going to see crumbs. I'm not sorry about it. So the instructions do say that you're supposed to snap these cookie pieces apart, but I got scared that they would just crumble in my hand, so I pulled out a small serrated knife and just very slowly sawed them apart so gently with so many crumbs. But it worked out fine. So I'm just using my everyday trusty base royal icing. When I make my big batches of royal icing, I already put a few drops of white food coloring there just to give it a little bit more opacity. So that's what I'm using here. I'm just thinning it out a little bit to what I would normally use for text or lettering, because the details that I'm going to do are pretty small and pretty fine, so I want a decently stiff consistency. Here's a pro tip. I use this novelty milkshake glass that's actually Riverdale merchandise. Not ashamed of that. I stand by it. But this milkshake glass is actually perfect for loading up icing into my tipless piping bags, because the glass is a cone shape and so is the bag. So they kind of fit really nicely together. And I find it to be just the best base for holding my piping bags while I fill them. Because I want to do really, really fine details, I snip just the tiniest bit off of this tipless piping bag. So my original idea for what kinds of designs and decorations to do was to take like Nordic winter patterns, the kinds that are traditionally associated with like ugly Christmas sweaters, to do something like that, but to incorporate, witchy designs, and instead of like reindeer, put, I don't know, like a pentagram. But when I saw the size of these cookies and the size of the house, I just knew that wasn't going to fit. So I just decided to throw some witchy designs all over. I know I wanted to do something really striking for the door, kind of where you would put a Christmas wreath. So I went with this top-down S-shaped snake motif. I've been super into snake designs lately. I haven't actually done that many bakes with that kind of design, but I have 2 planned. I'm going to get to them after this whole Christmas bonanza thing, so stay tuned for that. Be sure to subscribe here, follow me on Instagram if you want to see some more snake stuff. In order to get to where I felt comfortable freehanding the snake design, I actually drew this over and over again in my iPad, where I could erase it and draw it again, erase it and draw it again, until I really got that muscle memory into my hand. When it came time to actually piping it onto the cookie, I was able to lay down the shape and, refine it as I thickened the body of the snake. And yeah, I felt without that muscle memory practice, I don't think it would have looked nearly as good on my first shot. I would have had to scrape it off and try again. For the windows, I wanted to incorporate some bone details into the design, but while I was doing that, I had this realization.
Oh, this just looks like Tory Burch. Boo. How unspooky.
So yes, even though I inadvertently did Tory Burch's logo as my windows, I do think that overall the rest of the house brought it away from Tory Burch land and into a more witchy aesthetic. Then I topped the whole thing off with a little skull baby, kind of where you would put, I guess, mistletoe. Ah yes, kiss me under the skull, darling. Sounds pretty Gomez and Morticia to me, so I'm all here for it. And for the sides of the house, I'm going for a big ol' eye motif, some more skulls, and a little bone border. The bone border ends up looking kind of like merch from those super touristy voodoo shops in New Orleans, which I'm not mad about. And then I essentially repeat that on the other 2 cookie pieces, this time adding a couple of different designs, like an upside down cross, some pentagrams, some little star babies. And now for the saga of the roof. You see, in addition to all the little witchy designs, I really wanted to add details from Gothic architecture to this house. Now, unfortunately, a lot of what gives Gothic architecture its signature characteristics is the actual structure of the house, aka the only thing that I can't change with this kit. So I looked at a ton of reference photos and tried to pick out those smaller decorative details that still evoked that Gothic style. So here's the thing, a lot of Gothic roofs are actually pretty boring, they're interesting, but the interest comes from the structure of the roof, not how the roof is decorated or how the shingles look, rather. So I did find one house that had a scalloped shingled roof, and I really loved the look of that, so that's what I was going for here. Now, if you recall, the actual cookies have on the other side of them imprinted a scalloped shingled roof. But here's the thing, the design on the cookie are these huge honking scallops, whereas to match the Gothic style, I felt like they had to be a lot smaller. So to draw my little dainty Gothic scallop shingles, I laid down a grid of dots to act as my guide to help me make sure that those shingles were going to be a consistent size. After I lay down the dots, I come in and just draw in each individual shingle. Now, here's where it got super annoying. So just like the physics of the royal icing prevented these little U scallop shapes from turning out good at all, I think just the size of the stream of royal icing coming out of the bag paired with how small I was trying to make these shingles just meant that as I was trying to draw this lovely curved U shape, it was just coming out a little too straight, just not curved enough. So when you got a bunch of the shingles all stacked up together, it just looked like a crosshatch and not like this scaled, scalloped design. And I tried this several different times. I thought, oh, okay, I'm just gonna do it again and really try and focus on making it a really nice loopy loop. And it just wasn't working. So eventually I just scrapped it and I went with an actual crosshatch design. I felt like the royal icing was telling me that it wanted to be a crosshatch, and so that's what I went with. The thought did not occur to me until literally watching this footage now and recording this voiceover that maybe I could have tried just slightly larger scalloped shingles. But yeah, in the heat of the moment, it did not occur to me. So we went with the crosshatch. And you know what? Overall, at the end, I think it looks great. I think the important part of the roof is just that the scale of the shingles is really, really small, that it looks super kind of busy and detailed, and really that kind of gave me the look that I wanted anyways. So all this turmoil for just a plain old crosshatch roof. Oh well. For even more detail on the roof, I found yet another reference house that had this little decorative trim on the front vertical edge of the roof. So I did a little simplified miniature version of that as well. Several of the reference photos that I looked at had this vertical trim at the very top of the roofs. They look like wrought iron. I have no idea if they actually are, but I wanted to make one for my little house, so I decided to use the royal icing transfer technique. So for this technique, I got a spare cookie bag, just a plastic bag that is super, super flat. This is not a crinkly plastic bag, it's super flat and smooth plastic surface. You can also use parchment paper. And I just pipe the design of this roof trim that I want. I take care here to add a couple extra layers of icing to make it a little bit more sturdy because it is such a long and thin, delicate piece. I just pipe that design on and let it dry, and I'm talking fully let it dry overnight, 24 hours, whatever it takes for it to be fully, fully dry. And once it's dry, you can just peel it right off, and then it's this little trim piece made out of royal icing that you can stick on the top of the roof. And now it's finally time for assembly. So I let everything dry completely. The royal icing transfer already had to sit and dry for a while, so I let these dry overnight as well. And yeah, everything went together pretty easily. I just used exactly the same royal icing that I used to decorate. Normally I would use a much thicker icing to assemble a gingerbread house, but these pieces are so small that I don't really need that extra strength or that quicker drying time, just because yeah, it all goes together so easily. It's the great thing about these tiny little gingerbread friends. After letting the main house set up for a bit, not a full 24 hours or anything, but just maybe an hour, then I add on my little wrought iron roof trim piece. As you can see, the sort of half attempt that I did on top, it did break apart on that little plastic bag. These things are really, really delicate, but you can see that my actual roof piece turned out totally fine. Those extra fortifying layers of icing that I added really did the trick here. So I carefully peel it off of the plastic. If it's fully dry, it should come off super easily. If it seems like it's maybe a little bit stuck, it's probably because there's still some moisture there, so just let it dry a little bit more. But mine came off totally perfectly in one piece, and I just put an extra layer of icing on the top of the roof for it to stick to, and then plop it on. And I am so happy with this little roof trim. It ends up being probably my absolute favorite part of the house. I just think it's so cute, really evocative of that Gothic style that I was going for, and also just not anything I've ever seen on a gingerbread house before. I love it. And here is the finished little house. So I wanted to add even more details, so I grabbed my black royal icing and I added these little vines creeping up the side of the house from the corners. And Though in general, I think I did the technique well enough and they are, creepy crawly branches. The house is already such a dark brown chocolate color that the black details don't really stand out against it. So then I tried to add a little bit of white on the branches to kind of signify, some fallen snow on top of these vines. And again, I think I did that correctly, but overall I still wanted more. I wanted more from this house. So I decided to make a little graveyard scene. I used the same royal icing transfer technique to make a bunch of little gravestones, and I thought, I love the idea of the vines at the house, but they weren't visible, so I wanted to make a whole tree out of the same royal icing transfer technique as well. So again, waiting till everything is completely dry, I peel all of the pieces off of the plastic and then I start assembling my little scene. I just glue everything to the ground with my white royal icing. You'll see here that the same consistency that I used for decorating actually did not work for sticking these decorations to the board. It was too runny. I had to go and thicken the icing up more with some powdered sugar and restick all of my little pieces. But in the end, it all came together and I was able to build the entire graveyard. Then I just finished everything off with a little bit more white royal icing as some snowfall, and then I take some powdered sugar in a sifter and I just sift it all over my scene to have fresh fallen snow. And here's how my little witchy Gothic graveyard Oreo mini gingerbread house turned out. Here is my final house. I put it on this board, which makes it really awkward to present right now. But yeah, here's my little house. This is how big it is actually. I feel like altogether it gives me kind of Sleepy Hollow vibe. With the snake on it, I feel like it's like Hagrid's hut if Hagrid was a Slytherin, I like it a lot. Maybe you will also be inspired to do a bit of a kit bashing. I don't know if this qualifies as a kit bashing, but maybe take one of these gingerbread kits and do something a little different with them. All right, thanks.
Hey friends, thanks for watching. Do all the things. And see you next time.